Tonight, Lance Armstrong is charged with doping. The U.S. Anti-Doping Agency says his own blood shows he cheated. He could lose all of his Tour de France titles. Risky business. The head of J.P. Morgan Chase takes the blame for bungled investments that cost billions.
Well, the buck stops with me.
New York's mayor throws down a challenge, putting up some of his own fortune as the prize. It's nice to be a billionaire.
It is nice to be a billionaire.
And 2,000 dead in Afghanistan. David Martin counts the toll at home.
She lost her best friend. Joseph lost his big brother.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. Lance Armstrong, the greatest cycling champion of all time, is in jeopardy of losing all of his titles from 1998 through 2004. Late today, the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency accused him of using banned performance-enhancing drugs and conspiring to cover it up. The doping agency has also charged the head of Armstrong's team and 4 doctors and trainers. It has been a long investigation, and we are told that 10 former cyclists on Armstrong's team testified under oath. You're about to hear from one of them. Jim Axelrod has details.
A source close to the investigation says the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency charges were delivered to Armstrong yesterday in a 15-page letter. In the letter, Armstrong is accused of using the blood-enhancing drug EPO, banned blood transfusions, testosterone, and corticosteroids. The Anti-Doping Agency alleges Armstrong used the banned substances from 1998 through 2004, close to the years Armstrong won an unprecedented 7 Tour de France victories. The source familiar with the investigation says 10 former teammates of Armstrong's have testified under oath. One of the former riders who's given evidence is Tyler Hamilton, the subject of a 60 Minutes report on doping inside the U.S. Postal Service team.
Tell me what you saw in terms of what Lance Armstrong took in performance-enhancing drugs.
He took what we all took. Really no difference between Lance Armstrong and, I'd say, the majority of the peloton, you know. There was EPO, there was testosterone, and I did see a transfusion, a blood transfusion.
In addition to Armstrong, the Anti-Doping Agency sent charging letters to 5 other members of Armstrong's teams. The Anti-Doping Agency letter alleges that all were engaged in a conspiracy to administer banned drugs and to cover up their effects during random drug tests. The Anti-Doping Agency also alleges there was a campaign of witness intimidation to cover up the doping program. Armstrong has always insisted that he's never used banned substances, and he often points out that he's never failed a drug test.
Yeah, we got nothing to hide. We know that. Everybody knows that. We've proven time in and time out that we're clean.
But the Anti-Doping Agency's letter says recently uncovered evidence from 2009 and 2010 reveals Armstrong test results that were, quote, fully consistent with blood manipulation, including EPO use and/or blood transfusions. The source familiar with the investigation said today this case is, quote, the most compelling that the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency has ever had. Through a publicist, Armstrong accused the agency of a vendetta today. Unlike many of my accusers, he wrote, I have competed as an endurance athlete for 25 years with no spike in performance. Scott, the others named in the letter have not commented.
Jim, thanks very much. Under the rules, Armstrong can ask for a public hearing. If he does not contest the charges, he is likely to lose his titles. Recently, Armstrong told Men's Journal magazine, quote, I'm done fighting. I've moved on. I'm not contesting anything. Case closed. No one has forgotten that it was high-risk investments by America's banks that led to the financial meltdown of 2008. So when the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase appeared before Congress today, he had a lot of explaining to do about bungled investments that cost the bank more than $3 billion this year. Correspondent Nancy Cordes was there. Nancy?
Scott, Jamie Dimon came to Capitol Hill armed with an apology, saying forcefully, "The buck stops with me." He blamed a flawed computer model and a flawed strategy for disastrous trades that originated from the very unit at J.P. Morgan Chase that is tasked with managing risk. Senators wanted to know why Dimon himself didn't alert shareholders and regulators to these mounting losses until mid-May, but he said he was misinformed about the scope of the losses and that some executives who were responsible might have to give back millions in compensation. Here's what he said.
In response to this incident, we've already taken a number of important actions to guard against any recurrence. We've appointed entirely new leadership for CIO. Importantly, our team has made real progress in aggressively analyzing, managing, and reducing our risk going forward. While this does not reduce the losses already incurred and does not preclude future losses, it does reduce the probability and magnitude of potential future losses.
Despite this embarrassing incident, Dimon said today he still believes Wall Street needs fewer regulations, not more, though he did acknowledge, Scott, that the proposed Volcker rule might have made a difference here. That rule would require banks to use just their own money, not clients' money, when they're making risky bets.
Nancy, thank you. The situation in Syria is becoming more grave by the hour. The Assad regime is terrorizing towns where rebels are believed to be sheltered. Amateur video shows the city of Homs under bombardment. Makeshift hospitals are overflowing with the wounded. Many of them are young children. There are running battles outside the capital. Again today, the U.S. accused Russia of sending arms to the Syrian dictatorship, and Norah O'Donnell has been talking to her sources at the White House about that. Norah?
And Scott, the situation in Syria is so deeply concerning that the Obama administration has now decided to single out Russia in a new way, not just for their support of President Bashar al-Assad, but also for continuing to sell some of the very weapons that are used to crush the opposition and kill innocent civilians.
We believe that the situation is spiraling towards civil war, and it's now time for everyone in the international community, including Russia, and all Security Council members, to speak to Assad with a unified voice.
Secretary Clinton's urgent request comes just one day after she accused Russia of sending a fresh supply of gunships to Syria. And we've learned that the U.S. does have intelligence that a shipment of Russian Mi-25 attack helicopters is on its way to Syria and set to arrive later this month.
Russia says it wants peace and stability restored. It says it has no particular love lost for Assad, and it also claims to have vital interests in the region and relationships that it wants to continue to keep. They put all of that at risk if they do not move more constructively right now.
Now, Syria has Russia's only naval base in the Mediterranean Sea, and that could be at risk if Assad is pushed from power. And Scott, all this tough talk is going to set up a critical meeting next Monday between President Obama and Russian President Putin. That's their first meeting since Putin resumed office.
Norah, thank you very much. We got striking evidence today of the human rights situation in China. You remember a few weeks ago, the blind Chinese dissident Chen Guangcheng escaped from house arrest and with the help of U.S. diplomats was allowed to come to the United States. The trouble is, several members of his family are still in China. No one's been able to find out what happened to them until Holly Williams of Sky News slipped into their village. Here's Williams on assignment for the CBS Evening News.
Chen Guangcheng no longer lives in Dongshigu village. But we found it guarded by men who locals said were thugs hired by the government.
These men are refusing to identify themselves, but they're saying that we're not allowed into the village and we can't film here at all.
Chen Guangcheng escaped house arrest in April. We went to Dongshigu to find out what happened to the family he left behind. Chen's older brother met with us at a secret location nearby. He told us police tortured him to discover how Chen managed to escape. They handcuffed me and tied me to a chair, he said. Then they chained my legs together and began to beat me around the head. They removed my own leather belt, looped it together, and then hit me with that as well. He said they also beat his wife. And when his son tried to defend himself with a knife, he told us, the police arrested him and charged him with attempted murder. We waited until nightfall, when the guards were off duty, to try again to get inside Dongshigu village and meet Chen's elderly mother. Wang Jinxiang is 78 years old. She told us she's been targeted for years, ever since her son spoke out about how the local government forced women to undergo abortions as part of China's one-child policy. The men follow me wherever I go, she said. 3 or 4 of them at a time. Sometimes they search me, my bag, my clothes, my pockets. They even search my shoes. This is the wall that Chen Guangcheng scaled to make his way to freedom. His brother told us Chen waited until his guards went to get water to make a run for it. He had only 10 seconds to do it. It was a desperate act after years of imprisonment and abuse. Now Chen has freedom and a new life in New York with his wife and children. But the rest of his family still faces an uncertain future. Holly Williams, Sky News for CBS News, Dongshigu Village, China.
Where the jobs are, which states are creating new opportunities? Battling that Colorado wildfire even after his home was burned to the ground. And the road to Camelot when the CBS Evening News continues. That wildfire in Colorado has burned 73 square miles and left 1 person dead. 1,000 firefighters are on the scene, and our Barry Peterson is with the evacuees.
At Vern's Place, a thank you sign for hundreds of firefighters, including volunteer Randy Starkey. While battling to save other houses, he saw that his home of 3 decades was gone.
Inches of ash everywhere. It looked like a volcano had erupted, and the ash was just everywhere.
Little survived the wind-driven flames of a forest that is tender dry from the hottest spring on record in Colorado and months of drought. Normal rainfall is usually 7 inches. This year, less than 3.
Putting the depictions of this drought on the map.
Colorado State University atmospheric researcher Morgan Phillips is tracking the changes.
Is this all kind of part of one effect, and is this perhaps the worst part of it?
I would say that yes, this is all sort of a broad one effect, and when you miss a large part of your annual precipitation, it's very difficult to make that up.
Even the grass, which should be a carpet of green this time of year, is bone dry.
This dry grass right here will burn very quickly, I mean incredibly quickly. This is sort of the gunpowder of wildfires.
This afternoon, some 2,000 people who were evacuated gathered to get their first solid information on whose homes survived and whose did not. Glenda Lasandak was optimistic.
I feel pretty good about our neighborhood, but I know there's going to be a lot of people in there that are going to get bad news.
Fire officials are letting some people back into their neighborhoods, but others may need a lot of patience, Scott. This is a very stubborn fire. They may be fighting it well into fall.
Barry, thanks very much. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce today put out its first list of enterprising states, the states doing the most to stimulate growth. Heading the list, North Dakota, Wyoming, Virginia, Alaska, and Maryland. Rounding out the top 10 are Texas, South Dakota, Washington, Iowa, and New York. The mayor of New York makes a challenge to other mayors, and he puts his money where his mouth is. That's next. New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg issued this challenge today to other mayors. Come up with new ideas for fixing the problems that cities face and win a share of $9 million for your city. Bloomberg is 70, serving his third and final term, and he made billions through his media company. His foundation has donated nearly $2.5 billion to charities. Today, we asked him about his new challenge to fellow mayors.
Every city in this country has similar problems. Unfortunately, in this country, we're not sharing ideas as much as we could. The whole idea of the Mayor's Challenge is to get cities to come up with really innovative, creative ideas which are useful in government at the city level and that are transferable to other places.
You banned smoking in every building in New York City.
Yep.
You made restaurants put calorie counts on their menus.
Yep.
Now you're on a crusade to get rid of those really big sugary drinks. Yep. And a lot of people ask, what business is that of the mayor?
Obesity is the fastest growing public health issue around the country, but also in New York City. And we're not banning anything. We didn't ban smoking. All we banned was you can't smoke where people have to work, so nobody has to choose their health or their jobs. Calorie counts, we're just telling you what is in there. You've got to make the decision.
But the criticism, Mr. Mayor, is, you should run the fire department and the police department and the waterworks. Don't tell me I can't smoke and don't tell me what I can drink.
If there's asbestos in the building, we have a responsibility to tell you. Asbestos can kill you, and asbestos is in that building. Don't go in. We regulate alcohol products. We have speed limits. We do a lot of things to protect you. And there are some people that say, oh, government shouldn't do anything. But if you really think about it, in today's society, letting people just willy-nilly go at 100 miles an hour, not telling kids that smoking's bad for them, I don't think if you really think about it, people would want to do that.
You get to do what really no other mayor in the country gets to do. You get to spend hundreds of millions of dollars of your own money.
Well, that's
on the things that you care about. It's nice to be a billionaire.
It is nice to be a billionaire. Some people spend it on toys and on the big vacations. I haven't had a vacation in 10 years. I get a big kick. Maybe one of the best things I've ever done. I was down in Baltimore a few weeks ago to dedicate a hospital in my mother's memory, a children's hospital. I think it's going to be the greatest children's hospital in the world. Being able to do those things is, you look at a mirror and you have a smile on your face. And I've been very lucky in terms of making a lot of money, and I'm going to give it all away. I've always said my great ambition in life is to bounce the check to the undertaker.
We were struck today by some pictures from the campaign trail of 1960. Life magazine just released these photos from John F. Kennedy's run for the White House. They show a relentless campaigner, a father with his 3-year-old daughter, Caroline, a hint of the glamour that Jackie Kennedy would bring to the White House, and a 43-year-old candidate with a rare moment, alone in his thoughts. They are the forgotten casualties of war, the families of Americans' fallen heroes. That's next. The war in Afghanistan has just passed 2 milestones. It has lasted more than 3,900 days, and it has cost more than 2,000 American lives. But there is one statistic that we can't give you: the number of lives changed by each of those deaths. There are too many to count, as David Martin found.
The number 2,000 only begins to tell the story of what's been lost in Afghanistan. Take 21-year-old Nicholas Kervin, gunned down by insurgents on Mother's Day 2005. It was his last mission before he was due to come home. There's his mother, Beth. She signed the papers for him to enlist in the Marines right after 9/11. He was 17.
He had to get my permission. I had to sign the form.
Then there's his stepfather, Michael, his younger brother, Joseph, and older sister, Pride.
She lost her best friend. Joseph lost his big brother.
That makes 4 people whose lives will never be the same.
It changes who you were. It changes where your children fit. It really changes who you are.
Then there's Lexi Bastian, whom Nick fell in love with while stationed in Hawaii.
It's hard for her.
So add another life.
Another one.
The story of what was lost is all around you in the house where Nick grew up.
Now, did that ball cap and scarf come back with his personal effects?
That was the first thing we pulled out of his box from Afghanistan.
You can tell it's done some hard traveling.
Yes.
Yeah, Beth wouldn't clean it off.
But you wouldn't even clean it?
No.
That's Afghan dust.
came back just the way he wore it, and that's how I wanted it to stay.
There are pictures of Nicholas all over the house. This is his mother's favorite because it answered the question she kept asking.
Hey, are you really in a better place? Are you really happy? And for the first time, I saw lettering to the side of his head, and I focused in to see what it says, and you can see what it says.
It's great.
There's a debate in the family about whether there are too many reminders of Nick, making their house more shrine than home. His combat boots, which are more heart-wrenching than his mother realized until this very moment.
So I have to ask her, are these the boots he died in?
Yes. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. Sorry.
And then there's this hat.
This is the hat he also died in.
Brought to them by a sergeant who was there.
The sergeant really had a hard time with all this and sort of went off the deep end and had post-traumatic stress.
2,000 dead. They're the ones who sacrificed the most. But behind them are thousands more still reeling from the loss. David Martin, CBS News, Fairfax, Virginia.
That's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News, all around the world, good night.